Good afternoon. Welcome to the Chicken Box. It's Thursday. It's June 16th. The year is flying. We're halfway there. What quarter are you in? What part of the mindset of business are you in? What news factor are you in? But guess what? This weekend, we're talking about, yes, June and the 19th, and it just didn't work. So this is Black people versus Juneteenth. It's been put together. It's a word that's been made. It's a movement that's been made, and it's a celebration that is occurring all over the country. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to find out how it started, uh, how we feel about it, what took them so long, what kind of games they've been playing with it. But I'm your host, Impeccable, along with my co-host. Hey, Courtney, welcome
Hello.
again. The second meet Courtney. She's one of our newest Afro team members, representing the Gen Z. What's happening with you all the way in Chicago?
I'm surviving this heat wave. It's humid outside, it's sticky, so I'm remaining indoors.
You laying down on the floor at night? Is it that hot?
Almost.
Not that hot. Dr. Draper, welcome back to the Chicken Box. We missed you. You've been traveling a little bit.
Thank you. I was on for a little bit, but glad to be back on the box. Courtney, it is hot and humid here in Maryland as well. Not hot enough to lay on the floor, though, but hot enough to keep it on 24/7. And we get to Patrick. He's going to tell you it's like that in Dallas all the time.
Yeah, it is.
Welcome, Patrick, back to the Chicken Box. One of our, family papers. We got Black-owned businesses and papers all over, but they represent Dallas. Patrick Washington of the Dallas Weekly. Welcome back.
Thank y'all so much. Happy to be here. And yes, it's hot everywhere right now. So good luck to y'all up in the north, because I don't know what y'all doing. Because it's normal kind of down here.
Man, when we came up with this week, I mean, this is Juneteenth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some people know what Juneteenth is, and some people have heard the word Juneteenth, and I don't know if it's connecting the dots for everybody, but we want to just see how everybody is feeling about this national holiday one and just the journey that we took to get there. So I found a little teeny video. I know I don't like to play a lot of long ones, but that we can share really quick, and then we'll get right into the conversation.
After 4 bloody years, the Union defeated the Confederacy to win the Civil War and abolish slavery in April 1865. There were nearly 4 million slaves in the U.S. at that time. Union armies began marching through the southern states, freeing thousands of slaves each day. The news took months to reach Texas, the westernmost state in the Confederacy. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger and 2,000 Union troops rode into Galveston, Texas, and told slaves of their freedom. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. Granger's words spread through Texas. All at once, slaves found out the war was over and they were free. Their joyous, spontaneous celebration gave birth to Juneteenth. Juneteenth, a combination of the words June and 19, commemorates when the last enslaved people in the South were finally set free. Many slaves were met with violence, even death, when they tried to leave. Yet the promise of freedom extinguished fear and fueled generations of indestructible people. Former slaves gathered on Juneteenth the next year, and the year after that, and over the decades, Black communities observed the holiday with festive family gatherings, colorful parades, and bountiful barbecues. Texas became the first state to make Juneteenth an official holiday in 1980, and since, all but 3 states recognize Juneteenth as a holiday. While it is not a federal holiday in the U.S., following the summer of protests in the wake of George Floyd's murder in 2020, private companies have made Juneteenth a permanent paid holiday for their employees. Juneteenth is a celebration of independence, the day all Americans were truly free.
Boom! The day all Americans are truly free. If you haven't known,
Now it is a federal holiday.
yeah, that was a few years back, and there was a push, and the last to come aboard with freedom was the first to come aboard of making it a holiday. All right, let's chime in. I mean, you can get caught up. You can get caught up in that whole pause, and you get to thinking about just, it's not like information today. We can just get on the stream and all of a sudden everybody knows. It's just how the information finally got there, and then what it took, even for people who wanted to keep oppressing you, to move to another place. The free labor was over. They, but yet they wanted to push you. So, what do you think about, Pat? You're down in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
What's the climate down there around Juneteenth?
It's actually a little mixed where I am, and I'm in Dallas. Let me make a distinction there. Like, Texas is a big place, and the urban centers are a little different from the rural in between, and is a lot of rural in between. So in the cities, it is a conversation about commodifying the holiday, folks getting here late to the party. Some people are kind of just happy that it's a thing that's being quote unquote celebrated. And I wrote a piece for Word in Black, I think last year, about my feelings about it becoming a national holiday. And I had to come to terms with the fact that I kind of am okay. At the time, I was okay with it being a national holiday. And I did, I think, put some focus on the fact that, American holidays are more so commercial thing. Like, Christmas is about, presents and, the food and, the buying of things. New Year's, Halloween, all these things we call like our national cultural holidays are really just opportunities for us to, spend money. And then we kind of pepper that with, morality and stuff. So, be nice to people, give gifts, show love. And so I was interested in how that was going to happen for Juneteenth, because I thought it was going to be something similar. Was not prepared for the direct commodification of the holiday. But now we're it's been here forever. My life, it's always been a thing. So the idea that there are going to be barbecues and a parade, it's like yeah, it's still a little strange that it's happening in Maryland right now. It's like what y'all doing, up here. But I do want to bring, just before I toss it back to you, the real focus, because I have Yankee parents, by the way. They're from Philly and Chicago. So there's always been a conversation about what does this really mean? Because I'm not going to use no foul language that's been used in my household, but it was been called like a Negro kind of celebration. It's like y'all celebrating being late to the party, y'all celebrating not knowing anything. I've been told this stuff to my face by relatives, like y'all is just ignorant Texans out here doing nothing. But I think a thing that really made sense to me as a child was what they put in that video, which was it was actually a more of a observance. It wasn't really a celebration. Yes, we celebrate, but the holiday of sorts is an observance of people understanding that they are not enslaved. And that, I thought, was something that no one in our community really celebrates. We have an Independence Day for America. We have a fake Cinco de Mayo for Mexico. We have, people celebrate their fight for liberation. And I think that there is some level, or there might still be, and there probably is, some level of, I don't know if resentment is the word, but the level that, this isn't a holiday about fighting for independence. That's what I've been told. It's about you were freed. Why are you celebrating your masters letting you go? And that video brought up a good point. It's like, well, that did happen, but at the same point, as soon as that happened, you couldn't put Black folk back in them fields. Like, you couldn't tell them they weren't something that they knew they were at that point. So this was more like a mental liberation holiday. This was us understanding that we don't have to do these things, and we never should. The names we were called, the experience we had to go through, the hell that literally that we were living in, ends because now we know it ends. Not because some white man told us that, because we now said, oh, I get it. I choose this path. That level, that decree that they talk about wasn't for us. It was for white folk, to let them know that you have to change, like you have to stop. And like they said, people were killed on that day. People were killed the days after for asserting their freedom. And Texas is one of them hard Jim Crow states, hard Jim Crow states. So it wasn't easy after. But that holiday, that observance has been celebrated during the darkest time, during that Jim Crow, during the lynching eras, we were doing that way before it was cool, before it was popular, before it got to pressuring white folk to be better. And that's what I kind of take pride in now. Regardless of everything else that's happening with the Walmarts and the Vaselines and all that, we've been standing on that understanding for almost 100 years now. If you think, 1865, 100 years, 65, 100 and some odd years, whatever the math is. And now it's now being recognized nationally. So there's some kid out there who's always going to know that, you can't call me a slave or anything like that, because I have been this. It's like, I call it the Barack Obama effect. My generation, so I would have told you the day before the election, ain't no way they're going to elect no black man as the president. The day after, someone said, of course they are. Why wouldn't we? That is how normal that we are now. So I think I take my pride in that, and I'll toss it back to you.
Man, that's a handful. If you just tune in, this is Black People versus Juneteenth. This is the Chicken Box. If you've never heard of us before, it is a term in Baltimore. It is 4 wings and fries. If you ever get to Baltimore, it's a greasy chicken box with salt and pepper, ketchup, some hot sauce, and they call them a chicken box. And you usually get, we call it half and half. Some of the country calls it an Arnold Palmer sweet tea and lemonade. And and we make a meal out of it. But here on this show, as we just we talk about stereotypes, we inform, educate, and inspire things that our community is thinking about, and then we get a chance to get on the box like Patrick just was and speak his truth. It don't have to be your truth, but that's his truth. Because in Texas, while others are just getting a hold of Juneteenth, in Texas for hundreds of years, over 100 years, they've already been celebrating. And I like the most important thing you said was the mindset of freedom. You know what I mean? Because you're free in your mind initially. Dr. Draper, weigh in.
All right.
Weigh in.
So I appreciate that Juneteenth is now a national holiday, year 2. However, here's my caveat. We don't teach African American, we don't teach Black history to young people, at least not in our public school systems consistently, other than maybe a unit. You know what I'm saying? It's not infused across curricula. And so America was built on the backs of Black people. Folk acted ugly once. I mean, they were acting ugly before, but emancipation of Black people meant, my free labor is gone, right? And today it's still that way. Think about how we were viewed during the pandemic, dying at record numbers, Black people, but we are the ones that showed up to do what needed to be done in the jobs that we had. So all this to say that the contributions of Black people should also be infused. Yeah, it's a day to celebrate the fact that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. And we say, yeah, but we go back and read that history. That was not without a struggle either. It's not like he woke up and said, I think I'll sign this Emancipation Proclamation because it's the right thing to do. And that's not the way that went down. So I really hope this is a spark to dig a little bit deeper in terms of enslavement of human beings. In Baltimore, we had slave markets, open air slave markets, slave pens right downtown Baltimore, where the mainstream media advertised humans for sale. And we're now in 2022, and the question still remains, are we really free?
Are we really free? That is a good question. And the question starts is are you free in your mind yet?
Yep, free in our mind.
Right.
And so there are lots of things that are happening now, Patrick and Courtney. However, on the flip side, to commemorate and celebrate Juneteenth that were not happening in Maryland before.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Courtney, how you feeling about Juneteenth?
So it's kind of embarrassing for me to admit that I didn't really know about the holiday a few years ago. I'm from Chicago, but growing up, my mom moved us to the northwest suburbs. So I ended up growing up in a predominantly white area. And it's so upsetting that we did have a Black History Month unit, but we never learned about Juneteenth. And it's just upsetting to know that in the curriculum, they didn't implement this. We had no idea, and I didn't know about it until I started college. So I feel like a lot of my Black peers who went to the same high school, I still have contact with them. We have talked about this. Up here, we were subjected to a lot of racism. And yeah, it's just upsetting to know that our teachers didn't let us know, like, okay, this holiday, like what it represented. So I feel like if I would have known about it, then I would have, I guess, celebrated, or I don't know. It's hard to describe. Like, I feel like something was like taken away from me. So just hearing about the holiday and knowing that it is a national holiday now, I think a lot of people are aware now, and it's upsetting that, you know, before it was a national holiday, people didn't really know about it.
Thank you for your transparency. If you just tuned in, this is Black People versus Juneteenth. Now we're talking about history, and we're talking about the history that they want to share. And actually, my dad sent me something earlier this morning that said it's no accident, and it was just that you learned about Helen Keller instead of W.E.B. Du Bois. You learned about Watts and the L.A. riots, but not Tulsa, Wilmington. You learned that George Washington's dentures were made from wood rather than the teeth from slaves. You learned about Black ghettos, but not about Black Wall Street. You know, so I was like, wow. And that just goes back to saying that our history is not taught, and you can't expect another race to teach our history, because without force, it's 100 years before they even want to make Juneteenth a holiday. Like they like, we cool with, we built this whole nation with on slavery, but we cool with that. You know what I mean? How are you cool with that? You know, I'm not saying everybody's cool with that, but how do you live? I'm going to Tulsa on Saturday, and it's the person whose grandfather or great grandfather had done a lot of harm, and he funds the whole Juneteenth celebration. And I say to him, I don't know if it's guilt money or whatever else it is, but he at least feels the pain of the generations who made a mistake before and acknowledges that. The question is those who just go on and try to pretend that it never really even happened, and that it didn't occur, and that it's not continuing to happen through the information that they share, because they only want to share. It's like it's like on social media now. Nobody wants to share the picture that their face looks like this. They got this. The light has to be a certain way. It's like you want to edit your life, but you can't edit the history of how you were so mean. I'm just saying, it's just mean and evil for a lot of generations to another group of human beings that, and then you want to just edit the history. Patrick, what do you think about that?
I think that word history is the biggest word, because, there's history and then there's the past. The past happened, and it is a series of events that lead up to the present. History is someone's interpretation of those events. Mm-hmm. And it's not at all shocking to me that, and I know that it feels hurtful to folks who didn't know, but like I said, I always thought of Juneteenth as a Texas thing. It's like other states and other communities didn't have that. Like, I mean, Baltimore, as we were saying, is one of the largest Black populations historically in the United States, and close to DC. So the Emancipation Proclamation would have been at least understood in those areas way before it would have in the Western territories. So It doesn't shock me that, Black communities in New York or Pennsylvania or, Illinois even wouldn't have sort of a working knowledge of this particular subject. However, I'd also think that history is told to empower people. And as you said, our history is not told because, one, it would empower us, but also it would depower, if you will, the mainstream narrative of this sort of righteous and, home of the free, land of the brave kind of conversation that even immigrants coming here believe. You got to understand, when you start challenging that history of America, you're challenging not only, the white supremacist kind of understanding of it, but people coming from Europe, people coming from Asia saying this is the place where freedom lives. And then they get here, and only a few of those people really experience that American dream, if you will. Even you go back, not even that far, you'll find European immigrants being treated like second-class citizens. There was a group of Italians who were lynched in, I believe it was New York. But unlike us, they got reparations for that. because after a certain amount of time, they were recognized as white. And so, that's why one of my elders told me, like, every group that came here from Europe only took a generation to become white. He said, at first, the Irish were called, inside out Negroes, if you will, inside out Negro. The Italians were called half-breed Negroes. The Jewish people have their whole history of European oppression, which came and translated right over here. But those folks had a complexion that allowed them to transcend their ethnic origins to become Americans. Our history challenges everything about white supremacy, white superiority, white systems of oppression. You can't say that, the West was won by these white men when it's like, nah, we were out there with the Chinese and Native Americans building railroads, dying in those places. Your farmland, your rice, your foods came from us. Your artistic cultures, your musics, your dances, your things like that came from us. Even some of the ways we speak, the language we use, how we use it, that came from us, and so to say we're going to tell a history is to tell a story that empowers a group. And that, to be quite frank, our history empowers us and lets other people realize how they have disenfranchised not only us, but everyone else that comes here too. Women, LGBT people, Chinese, Mexican, Native American, anyone who was not Anglo-Saxon, Christian, white, has an issue with history. And we see that now with the CRT and all that stuff. It's like, don't tell them the truth. And I'm not going to put other, but Juneteenth happens in the summer. So there ain't no real need to get into the history of it with students. Things like Black History Month are what they're really mad at. It's like, oh, well, that happens during your prime second semester. You know what I mean? And so now that Juneteenth is a national holiday, I don't really believe that there are families out there beyond probably Black families talking about why we're even doing this. Because remember, we got here too after what? George Floyd, the summer of 2020. All that stuff happened, and Miss Opal Lee, God rest her, God bless her, has been championing this. She is an elderly woman who, I want to say is in her late 80s at this point. Let me not, speak too far off the cuff, but has been championing this for 30, 40 years in Congress. We have a reparations bill that's, up there, has not been appealed. We have anti-lynching that takes challenges. The question of why these things take so long to even be recognized is a part of that. You can't tell the history. You can't really, and now it's Freedom Day. Oh, it's Freedom Day? Really? I can walk outside and be free right now on Juneteenth in Dallas, Texas? Are you sure? How y'all feel about in Baltimore? Y'all feel safe out in the streets because it's Juneteenth? Y'all should feel free, right?
You better not put your hands up with nothing in them.
Yeah, we also have to talk about, like, what does that even mean? The idea of freedom, and it's like, so and I just have to bring up the Walmart thing.
Bring it up.
I know we all. We're waiting to get to it. Let me just throw the big spade out there real quick. Because it's, to me, when I saw that, was it shocking?
Talk about it because there's somebody here who doesn't know.
Who doesn't know? Who doesn't know about the Walmart situation?
Not us on the screen.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
The whole story is up on Word in Black.
A Word in Black, yes. You can see it all on wordinblack.com. Please sign up and get the newsletter and donate. So let me do a quick wrap. And so Juneteenth is here. We knew it was coming. We knew there was going to be a bunch of, commercialization. However, some of the big wigs at Walmart decided they were going to go register or trademark. I can't remember which one it was, if it was both. The actual name Juneteenth, and then try to market products under this trademark as some sort of favor, I guess, to the holiday of the people. The thing about it is, the strange and not too strange, but I guess the most egregious part of that is that this is a national holiday. I don't know if anybody can trademark Christmas. Heck, I don't know if anybody has tried to trademark even the fake holidays like Valentine's Day, Father's Day, the things we make up sort of to honor things that we just like. But the idea that someone thought they could commodify a Black liberation observance just to me speaks volumes to the fact that we are still commodities to these folks. We are still something to be bought and traded, bought and sold, put stock, invest, and make money off of. I don't know any other holiday. Is Cinco de Mayo owned by Corona? Is it something that you would even think could happen? But the idea that these people sat in an office room and said, we can own that, is just another issue of that history button. Like you can own our Liberation Day, you can own and sell back to us for more money. Now, obviously, that did not happen. I mean, for those that didn't, there was a huge campaign socially. I mean, obviously, it broke quick. And it wasn't just them. I think there was Vaseline had something out, like talking about Juneteenth, moisturize your skin or something like that. And that they put Freedom Day behind it. It's like, so we get charged for the observance of an egregious point in our history. And that white men will still make money off of supposedly our pain, our trauma. And that to me is just indicative of why this national holiday, this national observance, federal holiday, is still controversial. Because what does that mean as far as corporations are concerned? Because I mean, we're in June, which is also Pride Month. I'm not going to speak too much because I'm not a member of the community, but the idea that every corporation that is, Fortune 500 all of a sudden has rainbows out and is selling you products, but will not do things like, uplift you in the society you live in. That is Juneteenth to a T right now.
That's pimping.
That's pimping. That is, let me put you on the stroll, and I love you for it. I love you, but you're going to make me the money. And I'm going to put you through traumatic events over and over and over again as long as you're bringing me back that dollar. And when you don't, trust me, we don't celebrate. Juneteenth was as big as Martin Luther King Day here in Texas, always. I mean, we have 4 things: Juneteenth, Black Music Month, Black History Month, Martin Luther King Day, and Kwanzaa. Happens like anywhere else, it's like Christmas here. There's events, there's things like that. Martin Luther King Day used to be sponsored by all the corporations in the world. And I know there's other factors to why that isn't the case, but that ain't too much the case anymore. I don't see too many Kwanzaa nothings. Black Music Month is something that people look at us like we're crazy because we still do. We're doing it now. We're having concerts and things and celebrating our culture. Black History Month is, either you are observing it in school or you are completely against it. And now we got Juneteenth, another now controversial milestone in America's resistance to being inclusive, to being accountable, if you will. Because it's like, we talk about July 4th. It's like, I love this Frederick Douglass speech. July 4th, who was free on that day? Who are we celebrating the independence of with these fireworks and these like rah, rah, red, white, and blue? It's like, because I know we weren't. Like, and there's a whole bunch of people across that Mississippi that were like, crap, they're coming this way. We got to worry about that now. And so all of that is it's just weird. It's just sort of odd, something to be processed. Because on Juneteenth is more, it's a barbecue holiday. It's a red food holiday. I can't wait for the hibiscus tea and all that good stuff. But now I'm like, especially with what's going on now, I'm like, am I gonna have to worry about some crazy person with an AR coming to just shoot up a barbecue? Because now this day represents their insecurity and their fragility to them. And that's what I'm kind of worried about now. I'm like, man, it's like, yeah, we can be all happy but don't put too many about where stuff is happening, because we will get it's coming. It's just like, okay, whether it be this year or the next, it's another thing to worry about. And then as we celebrate that duality of being Black, we are happy, but at the same time we are sad. It's like, I wish we could move past that to it. There you go. and with the colors, I'm sorry, we had the nerve to put the red, black, and green and yellow on there. Like, look what we did for you. Sorry, I was just taking it back with great value right there at the top. Right. Great value on the Juneteenth ice cream with red velvet.
Right, but not only that, there's a small African American business that has the same brand of ice cream.
Absolutely.
So here you have the giant, coming and look and attacking the David, right? And so you have that as well.
When you could have gathered up all your Black brands that you have in your store, put them on firm display. I'm giving no discount. Get these people what they deserve, which is their money. I mean, I'm not to say that they're great and all, but Target did a better job of this. They did a big display. Had their Black people, had the commercials out with the faces of the owners. This just popped up like, thank you for your money, Negroes. We'll see you on June 19th. Here's your ice cream. I thought that was it's just so enraging to me. It's just like, oh my God.
That's why we need the Black press.
Yes.
Juneteenth, but I was at the gold medal celebration yesterday for the 688. And people were saying, oh, we never heard about this. We don't know anything about this. And so a person in the room was talking about the documentary and saying, then it went viral now because CNN, MSNBC, and after he did his talk, I said to him, Black press, if you didn't have the Black press as a source, you wouldn't even know there was a Juneteenth or a 6888 or the Hidden Figures or anything else. And that's another thing. This is also the 195th anniversary of the founding of the Black press this year. And so our people, so I hear people saying, well, y'all got to market it a little better. Well, we're doing that as well as we have the resources to do. We're not making an excuse. But the Dallas Weekly's been, how long you been writing about Juneteenth?
Every year, as long as I've been alive, at least, so that's 40 years.
We've been writing about it for 130 years.
No.
So, so it's there. So some of it we have to, there is a miseducation, as W.E.B. Du Bois said, but there's also a re-education that we want to take responsibility for in Black households. So Courtney, I'm going to ask you to weigh in, but Courtney Alexander, I know that if she decides to have a family, she's got that look that says, I'm going to make sure they all know about Juneteenth and Black Wall Street and the 888 and all of that.
Most definitely. I think that the people my age, we just need to educate each other, and we need to be more aware of our history and just things that's currently going on. So it is a mission of mine to educate my family, my friends, my future children, and we need to pass this history along for the future generations because I want them to know, and we won't forget. So I think that living up here, they try to, I guess, hide some of our history by not teaching it. So I'm going to definitely make sure that the future generations know what occurred.
If you just tuned in, thank you, Courtney. This is Black People versus Juneteenth. Actually, it's Black People versus history. It's Black People versus education. It's time to wake up. If you are a parent or even an adult, there's no excuse because information is there. Now the question is, has your mind been free enough to seek the information that's out there? And one, are you so busy that you don't share your history? I like how Michael Jackson said his story. Like, whose story are we sharing? Because the stories are so impactful throughout the years. And if the Dallas Weekly doesn't come on here, maybe somebody just thinks that the Afro is the only Black media company. It's not. It's not. We've had the Black press. We call it the press, but we're in the media business for hundreds of years. I mean, and we're celebrating our 130th this year. And the Dallas Weekly has been around for how many years, Pat?
It's been 60, 67, 68.
67.
Yeah, 68.
68 years. And
so we're almost there, halfway to halfway there.
Keep living, you'll get there. or your children will get there, or their children will get there. But information is so powerful, and and we, what we don't know keeps us in the dark, right? And so Juneteenth, they were in the dark for 2 years. It wasn't like an email that was, and even if it was something sent down, it wasn't until, like Patrick said earlier, the people realized that their freedom was there to grab, and they didn't have to wait for it any longer, and that they could go get it right now. And like you said, they died, they suffered, but they we free now. That's it. You know what I mean? At a certain point, when Black people make up their mind, that's it. You know what I mean? So when we make up our mind that we can't depend on any other organization, any other group to educate, to inspire us, to support our own businesses. We get so foolish. It's nothing against TikTok, but we get so into this. We can know all of this crazy, foolish stuff that happened all day, but skip over Juneteenth. We don't know nothing about it, man. And we're not even exposing our kids. it's stuff on YouTube. If you don't know anything about Black history, if you can just find a good clip and watch it with them, because you probably learning something too that you didn't know. Q says, I made sure that I told my 22-year-old son about the African American past that is not in the history books. I also did send the weekly Did You Know to my family. That's what I'm talking about, Q. Did you know? And I think Q grew up in Alabama, and Alabama is slow on everything. They were the 47th state, right, to come aboard and make it a holiday. Juneteenth. Listen, don't let June 19th. Guess what? It's coupled with Father's Day this year, y'all. It's like, dang, fathers still can't get just a day for themselves. I deal with Juneteenth, but it's so important, fathers, that it's worth sharing the day of the Juneteenth celebration. Man, support the Dallas Weekly, support the Afro News.
So, Kevin, I want to add this. We're talking about schools. There was a study done by the National Museum of African American History and Culture and Oberg Research. They said on average, only 8 or 9% of history class time in the United States schools is devoted to Black history. 8 or 9%. Give them their 9. That means I was in math class too. 91% of the time, no Black history is taught.
Absolutely. And guess what, y'all?
And
stop expecting them to do anything.
Right.
Stop expecting them to do anything that matters for our community. You already saw, and then when they always get caught with their hand in the cookie jar like Walmart just did, you still going in there to shop? Are you? They hey, I'm going to Walmart still. I don't care how they think of. That's the problem. That becomes the problem, right? When do you take your dollars and show them? You know what I mean? Because not till they get called out on social media, you call them out, or on Twitter, you have a rant or something, and it picks up. Then it's like, oh, I apologize all of a sudden. But I meant it. I meant to try to pimp you for another holiday, just like we created these other holidays to drive you to the store to get you to spend money. I really meant that. But now that I got caught, I apologize.
And that's the kind of the odd part about the world we live in now too. It's like, especially with social, I'll use Twitter. It just seems, there's just the cycle of, offense and then apology and then offense and then apology. And it's all really hollow at this point. Not to, bag on anybody for the, younger generation, but it's like there used to be a time when that accountability mattered. We're talking about, we're in this whole, January 6th thing now, and everybody keeps bringing up Watergate. But a lot of times, some outlets do, but what you don't hear about is that there wasn't any kind of hyper-specific social media narrative that contradicted what we all knew to be true, or at least as factual evidence. So there were people in the Republican Party who were like, yeah, get Nixon out. You can't do that. Like, you can't have that kind of behavior. And not to say that we're, way far beyond that, but the idea that a narrative can be counteracted by someone just saying, I don't like it. I don't like that, what you said. My opinion matters. And I used to tell people, I used to teach kids for a little bit, and they would say things like that, like, well, you can't be wrong with your opinion. I was like, so you think the Klan's opinion of Black people is right? Because they had an opinion. And I said, opinions based on your experience and information you have gained. It's not just something you say. So it's something you believe. And so belief, on the other hand, has no factual evidence base. So like, what are we saying here? When it comes to history, it's like, I was just blessed to have parents that understood that history for us is an empowering tool. Mm-hmm. It's not just the story of where it ain't just slavery, chains, and beatings. There's an overcoming story here. There's a breaking out of the struggle story. There's an achievement story that if you don't hear, you may think that you're always on the bottom. That's where you almost deserve to be. And then to a certain point, it's like when I keep hearing about Black First, I have this thing in my house we call Black First. We have a book. But I'm like, I used to hear things about Black people doing things for the first time, and it didn't make any sense. It more so was Black folk are now able to be accepted by white people in these very specific arenas. And I remember the one I thought about was I can't remember if it was Morehouse or something, but there was a Black equestrian team that was the first black such and such a question. And I'm thinking, I was like, horses. Like, I know I've seen pictures of black cowboys. I know I've seen pictures of black horses for hundreds of years, but this is being celebrated as something, as a first. And I thought about just the context of that headline. And it's like, it makes me feel as though we were never there, or we never did this. And in 20 whatever year it was, now we've arrived. And I'm going, but we've been riding horses and doing horse stuff since horses. You know, like, and how is it that this is our first? Not to take anything away for those guys' achievement for whatever they did in that sport, but also that level of how we're taught things. We're always just getting there. Other folks do it too, but in essence, we, as Dr. Davis said, we built this country. Ain't a first around that we ain't done. We were the first builders, first cooks, first chefs, first caterers, first, mainstream performers, first farmers, first, we're all those first, until a white person says, I recognize you in that position. Now you're the first. I mean, it's just reflective of Juneteenth. It's like, oh, now you guys have a freedom day. It's like, nah, man, we've been had that. Like, we've been celebrating it.
Yep.
Now you recognize it.
Right.
And now it's important. Right. Now it's history. You get it? Yep. Now it's a story worthy of history, even though it's always been historic. Correct. And it has to get back to what Courtney said. It's like, it starts in the home, y'all. Like, even if it's just, hey, man, pick your phone up, Google Black History Fact Today, and show a child, hey, you know this person? Did you know Garrett Thurman? Did you know, Sojourner Truth? I mean, the big names will come up first. Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, all those will come up first. And after them come the people you don't hear about. The context to those folk. The fact that the paper started, the Black Press started 195 years ago, but I always hear about Frederick Douglass's newspaper. It's like, well, 1827 to 1850 something is a big gap of who's telling the story. But Frederick Douglass is a keynote figure in white history too. Remember, he is the person who white folk were so enamored by because he could speak so well. Like there weren't other black folk talking about abolition in the 1800s.
Well, we just heard the other day that he was the most photographed. So he was
also the most photographed. Right?
He might be the first influencer.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He might have been safe.
Yeah,
Sam Lacey, who wrote for the Afro for, 60 years, he says Jackie Robinson was not the most ball player. He was the most suitable to not ruffle white folk feathers.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were, Sam Lacey writes about this in the book that he wrote about all of the black ball players, Patrick, to your point, already there, doing well, could have just taken over the major leagues, right? But Jackie Robinson knew his place and was the most suitable, and also was athletically inclined. So you have those kind of things. We have to do another chicken box on black people versus baseball. That's another whole discussion.
That's a good one.
Another whole discussion. But we need to take responsibility for doing our own research too. And let me say this: in every black family, good, bad, or indifferent, there's a history. We don't pass down our own family history, and we don't need Ancestry.com to tell us how to do it.
Facts, because they found another way to make some money. Hey, you want to know about your own family? Pay this amount of money here. But I like how you said ruffle your feathers, because a lot of people walk around trying to be people pleasers. The things that you do, or that some do, are just to please people, right? So if a person is uncomfortable in the original way that God made you, then that's their problem. It's not your problem. It's not for you to, like you say, quote unquote, unruffle their feathers. The thing about it is that we care so much about their feathers that you shrink your own self down instead of building your own self up of who, I don't know what you believe in, but who God said you were, right? And so you forget about who God said you were, kings and queens, and how powerful and how much you have and how much you can do. And then you try not to ruffle these people's feathers. I'm saying we got to leave these people alone. we don't need them to now, and if they don't like it, they'll shut down Facebook. Then what? Then they'll shut down IG. Then what? then we need our own. That's why the black press exists, because back in the day, they weren't going to say none of this nowhere and give us any kind of edge up on some information or education, because they know that typically they really can't handle true competition. I don't know if I said that right, but anyway, you know, God made everybody, right? It's not a distinction, but when you always feel that you got to hold somebody down so that you can look good, then that's the problem within yourself. Courtney, what you think?
So, that's a lot to unpack. I definitely
you grew up in those suburbs, so let me see what was happening out there in those suburbs.
I have a whole list of stuff. Like, I can create like a whole document. One thing that really bothered me was so in high school, it was like the kids made comments like, "Oh, you aren't that kind of black person," and I was like, "What do you mean by that? Like, what does that mean?" And they would try to like backtrack and be like, "Oh, like, I don't mean it like that." They were like, "Oh, you speak properly, like you dress a certain type of way, you're just different." And I'm like, "Well, I'm just like, I'm black, this is who I am, that's who I identify as." And it's like, I felt so offended by that. And that's when I really started to like wake up to what was around me and how they truly viewed me. Like, it was just, it made me feel kind of gross in a way. Like, you treat me better, but you treat my peers a certain type of way because they're a quote unquote certain type of black person. And ever since then, like, I've been very awake to like my surroundings and like who's been around me. So it's just very upsetting that they view us. I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but
you on the box now. Listen, this is the chicken box. You speaking your truth. I mean, unless you try and get high about some white folks real quick. You don't want nothing on the internet too.
I guess if we don't fit the white standard, then they'll like exclude us. They will like just treat us differently, and that's so upsetting because we're human beings. Like, we're all unique in different ways, and it doesn't matter how much money someone has, how they dress, like where they come from. Like, you treat us with respect. And yeah, that's something that I definitely want to see change because it's not right.
Absolutely. And if you just tuned in, this is the Chicken BOXX, powered by the Afro-American newspaper, with our special guest and friend from the Dallas Weekly, Patrick Washington, down there in Dallas, Texas. And we've been talking about how we think and feel about not only Juneteenth, but just history, and how we share information with each other. And it starts in your own household and how you perceive yourself. And if you missed the beginning, Patrick said, and when in the mindset of the Texans, the slaves after 2 years, when they got word that they were free, their mind automatically changed. And sometimes a person right next to you doesn't even know that they can be free by just one word. Will you give them that word is the question, or will you just sit there and know that you have the word to yourself, or will you share that word with a young brother or sister, with a family member? Where's your personal responsibility? I'm just, that's just a gut check. I say, don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. The hour is winding down. Thank you, Essie and Keisha and Q and Chippy and Betty and Dana and the White and everybody else who's been chiming in and just part of the conversation. We see you. We thank you. We don't want this celebration to go unnoticed, and we don't want it to go as just, hey, this is a holiday for us. We need to know what it really means, right? What it really means to be emancipated. But let's talk about it, Dr. Draper. We got a few minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna get on the box. This will be my final on the box. I was just sitting here thinking, it's not, and we know this. It's not only African Americans that need to know our own history. White people need to know the true history and stop watering it down.
Knowing the true history and accepting it is
you're gonna have some people not going to accept it, black and white. but it needs to be taught and taught accurately. And not watered down. And so this whole debate over critical race theory and how to teach enslavement in this country and all of that, you can't have a Juneteenth celebrates an emancipation. Emancipation from what? And are we yet free? And so, yeah, we had that signed, and Emancipation Proclamation. 2 years later, the folk in Texas found out about it, and so there's a celebration. But it still begs the question: are we still free? And if not, what are the systemic things that are underneath that? We got to teach that in all schools. If not, a whole lot of folk will still continue a false narrative around what happened and what will continue to happen with Black people. This is not a Black problem, right? That we came through. It's not like, oh, you know what, they were enslaved and we did them a favor and we freed them, and now they can celebrate and we're gonna give them some ice cream. It was also the watermelon. I think there was some Juneteenth watermelon too. Y'all don't hold me to that. But this is history that has to be taught across the board, and it has to be accurate history. And it's
unlike what Dwight says, it means what we make it mean.
That's right.
I heard how you said it too. I can read how you said it with that Dwight. We got to share our history to the world, even if it's through this holiday. I feel you, bro.
See, Dwight said it in one sentence. What I'm trying to say, we've got to make sure that we are part of telling the story. If it's history or her story, we have to be a part of telling it.
Or our story. Anyway, thank you.
I'm off the box.
She's off the box. Listen, this is powered by the Afro-American newspaper, the oldest Black business in Maryland, celebrating 130 years, August 13th. If you're in the area, we just confirmed Tommy Davidson from In Living Color. Come out there and enjoy the celebration. This is it's a gala, right? So it gives us a reason. It could be a night out with my lady. It could be a girls' night out. It's a night to dress up. It's a night to celebrate the oldest Black business in Maryland. If you're in the DC area, just go to afro.com. We'd love to have you there. This will be a sellout. Yeah, you've been looking for date night. You've been looking for things to do. Come on to the gala. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be good music, good, powerful Black people and white people, but celebrating the birthday of the Afro-American newspaper, 130 years when the business was started. Now, this is vision going into 6 generations when less than 2% of Black people could even read. So that's my shameless plug, but it's not shameless because we are not ashamed. No one owns our editorial pages. No one owns what we say, and what we try to do is inform, inspire, and educate it. We are a paper of record. We are a true newspaper. We're not about I don't knock the gossips and all of the rest of them, but we're not about the buffoonery. Okay, we're about telling the story, and then when you look back in our archives, you will see the importance of what happened on that particular moment in time. Okay, now I'm off the box on that. Courtney, all right, final word. You on the box, however you feel, whatever you want to share.
I agree with everyone, and I enjoyed this conversation. I'm on a mission to just educate more, to empower my peers, and to spread the word about this holiday. And yeah, history in general, it needs to be spread down. And I agree with Dr. Draper about sharing our family history. So that's something that I'm going to talk to my mom about later. And yeah, we need to start telling all of the history.
Absolutely. Thank you. Listen, we have 4 generations here. We got a boomer millennial, Dr. Draper. You got Gen X, wherever my people are, right there. We got the millennial, he doesn't say it, but I know he's called generation. And then we got Gen Z in the building. So we have perspectives from everyone, and that's what I love about it. And Pat, you are always welcome. You're on the box, man. I always love to hear you speak. You always bring so much knowledge, passion, and purpose to whatever the conversation is. And we might have to talk, man. We might have to, just have the Dallas Weekly and the Afro. We might have to combo on this chicken box because
I'm thinking of some ideas. I got some things popping off, but we'll talk a little offline and we'll get that going.
Absolutely. Final words. You're on the box.
I got lots of final words. So the real final word, 2 actually. One is that mental enslavement part. And for the audience that's listening, for anybody that live streams this later, understand that that is a really big deal, because you can go on YouTube, go on Google right now, and find people from like the 1970s who were unaware that slavery had ended. They didn't get that Union soldier coming into their small town and village, and people were able to be taken advantage of up and until the late 60s, early 70s, that people were literally shackled to fields, sharecropping in a certain way, and doing that stuff. And so it's not a game to talk about the freeing of the mind, understanding that you are not property, you are not a commodity, you are not a piece of something that someone can own. That's real important. Then Juneteenth can be that for a lot of folk. On a happier note, I also believe that we can create our own holiday system, if you will. You know, and like I mentioned, that 5-part, you know, little Texas kind of commemoration. But I've told my friends this. I want to make like Kwanzaa Christmas. And I'm talking about like, yeah, as frivolous as Christmas has become, I want Black folk to one day be able to wake up and get online and talk about the things they're doing in celebration of their own culture, whether that be Kwanzaa and Juneteenth or Black Music Month or Black History Month or Martin Luther King Day or Malcolm X Day, whatever it is, because honestly, all holidays come with controversy. There ain't a holiday we celebrate that doesn't come with a good side and a bad side. It's just that we choose to celebrate the good side. And like you said, we make it mean what it means, what we want it to mean. And Juneteenth can become the Christmas, the New Year's, the Halloween and the Valentine's Day for Black folk nationwide. And we can share our history. We can be proud of who we are. We can acknowledge that we have trauma that we have to confront, because that's a lot of time where our families aren't talking about our histories, because a lot of that is trauma. A lot of our elders saw some things that you can't even really imagine on a consistent basis. And one day those things didn't happen consistently. They do not want to go back and talk about. I know folk that have family members that were in Tulsa. Actually, here in Dallas, and I talk a lot on my Chicken BOXX, so I know we got time. But the oldest Black Chamber of Commerce, which is here in Dallas, was only started in response to Tulsa. Folks down here said they're going to come and burn stuff down if we don't have institutions to protect them. Let's start with our economic stuff. Because a lot of the stuff they were burning were the records of businesses, their receipts, their history of existing as successful Black businesses. And that was A. Maceo Smith, who started the chamber here. That was one of his direct reasons for starting one of the oldest Black Chamber of Commerce in America. So that history is being taught here only to really the people who go and ask. They go, oh, how'd that come there? It's like, oh, Tulsa? You know, when they burned down because of what? And so now we have an institution here that teaches that history, not even really in response to, you should know this, but here's how we started. Juneteenth started because people weren't free. How about that? There was an Emancipation Proclamation fought, a whole war fought, and people still were not free. It took soldiers walking into small towns and going, this is signed by the president saying, y'all can't do this no more. And then oh, wait a minute. And that word spread, like you said, spread quick in Texas. Spread, I think it was like, I've heard crazy stuff like it spread in 3 days. Like you couldn't get across Texas. But I mean, as quickly as it could, it spread. And if we can have that same energy, like you said, in Chicago and Baltimore and Dallas, to say, no, y'all, ain't no excuse, ain't no reason. We are all free human beings, children of God. Anything that happens to you that is egregious is not right. It ain't supposed to be. It ain't a norm. It ain't history. It's just what they're doing because they can. And that fight has to be taken in our hearts and souls and taken out to the battlefield. And I mean, it's not a violent fight. It's an intellectual, it's a moral, it's a cultural fight. And the Black press has been them soldiers without swords for 195 years at this point. And we can expand that army into our children, into our teachers, into our pastors, into our business owners, into our voting, into every element of who we are. And so now I'll get off the Chicken BOXX, which should become a soapbox, and I'll let this in. But I mean, I want the audience to know that like this is ours. As everybody celebrates, it's like pizza is everybody's, but it was made by Italians. You know, this Juneteenth is for everybody, but it's honoring us, and we ain't gonna let that go. So
absolutely, and the Italians got their reparations. Go ahead, Dr. Dre.
Yeah, that's true.
was going to say lastly, the battlefield, and Patrick, I'm in the same meeting you are at one, so we're going to jump off. The battlefield and the ballot box. So that's another whole discussion about our involvement there. All of us should be sending some money Georgia way. Kevin is in Georgia. Georgia way to Stacey Abrams and Raphael Warnock. That's another whole conversation, but it's still tied into our liberation and our freedom.
Absolutely. Yes, you brought up Georgia. We got Lake Lanier, the history of Lake Lanier. Look it up.
Yeah.
Look it up where they drowned a whole city of progressive, powerful Black people. And to this day.
And check out all the lakes in America and just see if they were man-made or not, because a lot of them have the same story.
Absolutely. And then the other thing is January 6th. You know that would have been a massacre if it was Black people out there. So all this tiptoeing and up dusting and whatever else you saying that this was you trying to impose your will on a system that you don't agree with. And that's what continues to happen in history. So until next week, God willing, okay, maybe you haven't done it all day. Here's my favorite thing to do. Smile. You have to smile. It just makes you feel better. It makes somebody else feel better. And you can push on through your day because despite all of those negative things, there's a bunch of positive things that you probably don't even say to yourself on a daily basis. So until next time, Patrick, Courtney, Dr. Draper, and everybody listening, thank you for tuning in for the conversation. And support Black business and recognize Juneteenth for what it really is. Have a great day, everybody.